What's up everyone, I'm Gushi and welcome to RPG Labs. Today we're going over everything you guys need to know about Valve's new game, Deadlock. First of all, Valve never disappoints in games. And two, it's a new style of game mixing two genres. It's a hero shooter where you play in third person, which also has MOBA elements. So if you like games like League or Dota or even Overwatch, I highly recommend checking this game out. To start things off, this is an objective-based game. Doesn't matter if you have the most kills, the most damage, if you don't win the objective, you don't win the game. Now just like all the other MOBAs, if you look at the map on the bottom, you'll start in one of 4 lanes at the middle of the map. Here, you'll be facing minions, and your first obstacle to the base, which is the Guardian. Now this beginning phase is called laning, and you'll see this term in build descriptions, and maybe even reference in voice chat. Now the goal here is to collect souls, which drop from killing enemies. Souls drop from friendly and enemy minions, which is super important in this phase. The most important thing you can do in this phase is to secure your souls, as well as denying enemy souls. Souls are the primary currency in this game, both for XP and currency. So naturally, with more souls, you'll get more powerful, you can buy better items, and unlock your abilities faster than the enemy. And really, that's the goal of this beginning phase. The number one mistake I see people playing is taking too much damage in this phase. If you take too much damage, you have to take the time to heal, and that's time that's taken away from collecting souls. It's a perfectly viable strategy to sit back, not even engage with the enemy player, and just secure souls. Now, your playstyle is going to change depending on which hero you choose and which heroes the enemy in your lane is choosing. Matchups are important. Some heroes are better at poking, others need those souls in the beginning to level up their abilities or buy some items, ramp up, and then they become powerful. Really depends on your character, but in this beginning, again, the main objective is to secure souls. Now if you are taking damage and your health is low, there's several ways of healing. First, each wave of minions has a healing minion. In this example, it heals 40 HP every 5 to 6 seconds. Not sure if this is a percentage or if it's a set amount, but honestly this is one of the worst ways of healing. Second option is to go back to base, so take the zipline all the way back. Of course, the downside of this is that you're out of the fight. You can use a zipline booster, which is indicated on the screen over here, which does go on cooldown after it uses. Once you're in the base, you get a huge boost to health regen. Then you can head back to your lane. I'm guilty of this, but if you forgot your lane, just look at the arrows coming from the ground. Mine indicates that I'm at pink lane, so I'll just take the pink lane back. If you're fast enough, your zipline boost will still be active. It is on a duration, so it is possible to have that boost back to base and back to the lane. The third option is to buy an item called Healing Right. This is an active item which goes on cooldown, but so also gives you a big boost to health regen, but it stops when you take damage. So while using this to get to full health, most likely you'll be in the back just securing souls. And the other major downside is that it costs souls. It is one of the cheaper items at 500, but that is 500 souls you're not spending on other items. So definitely a trade-off there, which you have to assess case by case. Now once you get to the Guardian, it's important to push with your minions. The Guardian does a lot of damage to the nearest target. So you always want a minion to face tank the damage so you don't take unnecessary damage. The Guardian also drops souls, so make sure that you're securing them if the enemy is around, and vice versa if the enemy takes out your Guardian. Always try to prioritize denying those souls. So around this phase, when Guardians are taking damage, you have to be on the lookout and you have to look for opportunities to gank. Ganking is a term used when leaving your lane to fight other players in another lane, using your number advantage to hopefully wipe them out. This is where keeping a constant eye on your map is very important. In this example, 4 people merge onto our lane attempting to take us out. Of course, we hold them back, get a couple kills, but that mini map is important to give us that information whether to pull back or to keep fighting depending on numbers. We'll quickly go over the other obstacles that you'll face on the way to the core. Next we have the walker. Then you have 2 guardians at the edge of the base. Once you get in the base, there are 2 shrines, each on opposite ends of the base, which you have to take out both to then expose the patron. Patron's in the air, and once you take that out, it'll drop the core at the middle of the base. Take out the core and you win the game. Now, as your team is progressing to the base, there are a couple of side objectives that you can do that could give you a huge advantage as the game goes on. First is what we call jungling, or farming for souls. As you're going throughout the map, you might see these guys, which you can take out for extra souls. They are marked on your map through this icon and have different tiers depending on which color they are. They're marked as green, orange, or red, indicating their difficulty and the amount of souls that they provide. Finally, you have the mid-boss. The mid-boss spawns around the 10-minute mark, and when defeated will drop this crystal, which the team that melees that crystal will get the buff called the Rejuvenator. Now this mid-boss does have a regenerating shield, so you do need to have a decent amount of DPS to actually get to the health bar, depending on how many souls your team has. It could take up to 3 people to take the mid-boss down. The reason why this is so powerful is that the Rejuvenator buff that you get will half the respawn timer when you die. This gives you a huge advantage when pushing the base, because if you do trade out on kills, your team will respawn faster and still have the advantage. Of course, as mentioned before, you get the Rejuvenator for meleeing the crystal, so you can imagine how some teams opt to stealing the buff rather than fighting the mid-boss. Finally, the last thing you could do are break these boxes and these urns, which drop these small permanent buffs. As you can see, you can get cooldown reduction, souls, more ammo, or more HP. Builds are a huge part in this game. Each character with their unique abilities and the different variations of items you can buy with those characters provides drastically different playstyles depending on what you like. Each character will have their intricacies, but as a general rule of thumb, there are a couple of ways you can make builds. If we take a look at the things you can buy, there are 3 different categories. We got a weapons category, vitality, and spirit. There are so many things you can buy. So to make things a little bit easier, especially when you're starting out, is to go to the builds tab right here. You can hit browse builds on the top right, and these are community made presets of items within the weapon, vitality, and spirit categories. Usually builds lean either towards weapon damage or spirit damage, with spirit damage mostly tied to your abilities. If you hover over your abilities, you can see how much spirit damage it does, and as you purchase items within the spirit category, that base damage will increase. Now as you're browsing the builds, you'll notice that each item costs a different amount of souls. As a rule of thumb, the more souls it costs, the more it'll increase your base spirit damage. So here, this Siphon Life ability does 35 damage per second. I'll buy 4 of the cheapest items, and the damage per second jumps to 41. However, if I buy 4 of the highest tier items, the DPS jumps to 64. On the flip side, if you're focusing on weapon damage, you can actually hover over the weapon category right here, and it gives you a bunch of stats, like your gun's fall-off range, the DPS, your weapon damage buffs, ammo, and bullet lifesteal. Just like the spirit category, if you buy items in the weapons category, you can see that the DPS, bullet damage, and lifesteal goes up. Another thing to keep in mind is that most of these items also buff your melee and heavy melee damage as well. So for Abrams, who melees a lot, you really have to pick and choose which items buff the melee damage along with the weapon damage. Final category is vitality, and the more points you put into vitality, generally it increases your base health, your bullet shield, and your spirit shield. Last thing I want to go over is the movement in this game. You can crouch, jump, and dash, and use this in mostly all combinations. So you could dash crouch to slide, jump dash to quickly move in the air, and the main thing you want to take from this is the momentum and the directional input that you have control over. For example, as you see me sliding, I can quickly turn this corner, which is really helpful if you're trying to escape or engage around corners really quickly. Now this also applies to melee attacks. When you charge a melee attack, it has a decent amount of range, which you have control over. So as you're in that movement animation, you could do things like melee around corners and do melee delays if enemies are trying to parry you. You'll have even more control if you have this item right here, melee charge. It increases your heavy melee distance, so you can go around corners more, or even do 180s. Next thing to go over is momentum. There's a lot of items you can buy in the game that give even more ability to characters. Things like Warp Stone or Majestic Leap give huge bursts of momentum, which you can carry over to certain abilities. In this example, Pocket's first ability, called Barrage, keeps his momentum as he's using it. And of course, the faster you are, the harder you are to hit in the air, and the faster you can engage onto a target. Last thing I want to go over is some sliding tech. By default, sliding has a set amount of distance, but if you crouch and slide on stairs, it doesn't use stamina. Also, if you notice the bullet count, you have infinite ammo while you're sliding. So a common thing people do, especially when facing the first guardian, is to slide back on the stairs and shoot to get infinite ammo, essentially giving you more DPS and ammo in the bag. With that, I think that's all the basics I can think of for now. If you found this video helpful, please drop a like and subscribe, as we're going to be making a ton of build videos, tips, and tricks to help you guys get better at Deadlock. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one, and GG's.